I had a client once who had asked me how to break up monotony in writing his story. His concern was, well, I'm going about writing, I did this and I did that and I made this and I made that. Isn't it going to be boring reading just about me the whole way through? Well, there are many ways to break up monotony in writing your biography. And that's what I'm going to be discussing in this video. All right, yes, we love to know all about you. Your story matters. Your story is beautiful and glorious. At the same time, it is a good point that it helps to add some variety, to break up monotony so that it's not just the same sequence of events from one to another. Yes, it's about you, and yes, it is interesting, but there are ways of adding some flavor, okay? That's the word. There are ways of adding flavor to the story. So one way is including dialogue. So when you're writing about something that happened, you might be able to remember a particular event. Perhaps you remember getting your admission letter to university, right? You know what you were doing. You know when the letter arrived. You know you got it from the mail. You went in the house and maybe your mother was cooking, maybe your dad was washing up or something. You said, wow, it's the letter, it's here. Maybe everyone's had been waiting for weeks. And people rushed out and dad said, okay, let's open it, let's see. And you said, oh, I'm so scared, I can't open it. Can somebody else open it? And you gave it to your sister. So I'm just giving an example of dialogue. A very important life event. Most of us remember exactly how it transpired, exactly who said what, even just a few sentences. So adding dialogue in that manner can actually add flavor to your story and break up the monotony. Another thing you can do is talk about life events. Where were you when you heard Michael Jackson died? That's an example. I grew up in the era when Michael Jackson was a very big star. Where were you when you heard some people landed on the moon? Okay, that's not my time, but my dad can remember hearing about it. Where were you when you learned that something else happened? So putting in such things in your story can add a lot more fun to it. For example, I was in my first year in medical school at the same time that there was a solar eclipse across Southern Africa. And I remember going out with the special glasses with my friends to actually watch the solar eclipse. So that's an example. Both positive and negative events, world events, you can remember, you can put them in and say, it was also about this time that we heard that something happened across the Atlantic in Canada, in the US, in Brazil. You don't even have to have lived in that second place, right? But things were happening around the same time. And saying that around the same time this happened, it really emphasizes how, yes, this is your story, but you are part of a larger world and you're tying everything in to show that, yes, you are aware of other things that were happening at the same time. Also, people identify better with your story if you tie it to other events. Somebody in another country might actually feel very warmed by the thought of tying together with something happening in their country, even though you were not in their country. So this is yet another example how you can break up monotony in your story. The third is really describing people in detail. So you met this person at that office, but you started talking to him and realized he is from a certain town, or he is from my very same hometown, even though I met him in New York. We are both from Chicago, or we were both born in California, things like that. And saying, I liked him immediately. He was strong built, he was tall, he had glasses on, describe the person in detail. He had such a sense of humor. He was born to a teacher and that sort of thing. You know, someone who does it really well is Nelson Mandela's Long Walk to Freedom. If you read that, I highly recommend that autobiography for people wanting to write their story. You see how he really describes people in detail. This gentleman who helped me get from place to place, I was trying to get there and he drove by and he gave me a ride in his car. We started talking. Turns out he was from Natal and things like that. He was born to a teacher or a farmer, and he really describes that in such nice detail. So that's a third way you can add monotony to your story. Again, to recap, the first way is to use dialogue as remembered, okay? Especially for really important life events. The second is to think of events in the larger world and tie them into your story, even if you weren't present, even if it wasn't in your country that these things were happening, but they happen around the same time. And the third way is to describe people in detail, your impression of them, a little bit of their background, a little bit of their life story. I like to say that every single one of us, our life story has a piece of other people's life stories in it. So describe people you meet, strangers, but also people in your family. Tell us about your mother, tell us about your father, and things like that. That adds so much flavor to your story, makes it so much more fun, and people relate better to it as well. I hope that is helpful. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you in my next video. Take care.